So what my panelists don't know is that I switched up all their questions, so this is going to be a good one for them. Well, the introductions were made, and of course, our bios are in the newsletter, and you could enjoy them because if I were to summarize it very quickly, you have the expert in general management of marinas from the Northeast down to the Caribbean. You have the president of some of the best shipyards in South Florida, and then you truly have the guru when it comes to foreign trade zones in South Florida with Gary. So we are here to talk about foreign trade zones, and I'm just going to give you a very brief summary on what does that mean for you and why is that important for you as a yacht broker. So what is a foreign trade zone? I'm just going to give you the actual legal definition to clarify. It's a secured area under U.S. Customs and Border Protection supervision that are considered outside Customs and Border Protection territory upon activation. Activation being a very important word in that. So if you were to go outside of our country, they're called free trade zones. Here we call them foreign trade zones. What does that mean for a company that is operating a free trade zone? Well, and as Jeff said, deferred and reduced or eliminating U.S. customs duty on foreign products. Foreign products would be a foreign-built yacht for your interest. Avoiding paying taxes and excise taxes. Import and handling products not permitted to be imported in the U.S. due to EPA or other government regulation rules, which would be very on par for Doug, since he's importing parts from abroad for use on vessels. What companies can benefit? So who in the audience can benefit from this? Every broker sitting in this room for sure, but also companies that import foreign manufactured goods, companies that export imported merchandise, marinas and shipyards, as we have here, manufacturers, logistic providers, such as National Marine would be an example of that. Retail companies in our industry would be another example. So I was asked to be your moderator because I have about 4 days left of being the chairwoman of Marine Industries Association of South Florida, and it was an initiative from Marine Industries Association of South Florida to develop foreign trade zones for our industry in South Florida. And Phil Purcell got the idea from what exists currently with the jet industry and their foreign trade zones and said, how do we capitalize on that? Because if we can capitalize on it, our entire industry benefits from it. So Marine Industries, through Gary's assistance, was able to be created a foreign trade zone subzone. And right now, we submitted a list of 13 companies that are approved to be activated, and again, we'll go over what that means. And I just want to let you know what those 13 companies are because I think it's very interesting. Directors, National Marine, Ward Marine Electrics, Pier 66, Hilton Fort Lauderdale Marina, Rossioli Yachting Center, Bradford Marine, Frank and Jimmy's Propellers, Lauderdale Boatyard, LMC, and Bahia Mar. And I left them last because out of those companies, and there are 2 missing right now, but out of those companies, they're beyond being approved, they're certified now. So out of all the companies that I mentioned, these 2 companies are certified and active as foreign trade zones. The other companies are still going through the process to be certified. So what do you need to know about that? Well, one, if it's something that you're interested in as a company, if you think you could benefit from being a foreign trade zone, to get under the Marine Industries subzone, you first have to be a member of Marine Industries. And why do I say that to you? And Gary will definitely expand on that during his questions, is that you can absolutely become a foreign trade zone outside of our Marine Industries subzone. However, there's a big difference in the cost that you're going to pay in order to do that versus paying a membership through Marine Industries and then taking advantage of that foreign trade zone, Marine Industries foreign trade zone. And Gary could explain a little bit more on what does that mean and what's the difference in whether you go through Marine Industries or if you're a company that wants to go outside and do your own timing and costs. So what we have is a hypothetical that we decided to use in order to make it very frank for your understanding on how it's actually applicable to you being a broker in the industry. And so we have a vessel. It's the motor yacht Bad Kitty, which is a 150-foot foreign-built yacht. Let's just say it's a Fed ship. She's Marshall Island registered. She's located in Fort Lauderdale and wants to dock at Bahia Mar and then relocate and do work at Lauderdale Marine Center. So we're going to start off with Megan. Megan, after closing, is a new yacht owner able to stay in the foreign trade zone?
Yes, they are. The biggest thing I think are very important is you hear Bahia Mar has a designation of a foreign trade zone, but it's only up to Bahia Mar to activate the slip. So it's not actually the whole property being used as that foreign trade zone. So the management of Bahia Mar, if you're interested, will have to activate a specific slip for that vessel. So once that vessel is in that activated slip, it's considered cargo. If the paperwork goes through and let's say you bring a US citizen to see the vessel, they love the vessel, you're able to take the vessel in and out of the zone under a 216 for sea trials. It's still considered cargo. So if you bring it back to Bahia Mar, all the paperwork can be done there. The vessel can be approved and sold there. However, if it decides to, let's say, go up to LMC under the new owner, it's still considered cargo. It's still within the foreign trade zone. And then the broker, let's say in this case Gary, would have to do a zone-to-zone transfer as cargo, still cargo, up to LMC for that work.
Okay, so to summarize then, let's just say we're going to put Jeff on the hot seat since he's the chairman of this seminar. Did he walk out? Of course he did. So now we could really talk turkey about him. So Jeff has an American citizen, and he'd like to take a look at Bad Kitty. She's obviously foreign built. No duty has been paid on her. And so the boat's not at Bahia Mar yet, but he knows he has a buyer that wants to look at it who's an American citizen. We know that the boat's not duty paid, and he calls you up and says, okay, we want to negotiate it so the boat is going to dock at your yard, be under the free trade zone, so I could show my US citizen buyer this vessel. So just quickly walk us through, what does that mean?
Right now we're asking, both us and LMC are asking that you let us know at least 15 days in advance so we can make it as easy as possible for everyone. There is some paperwork that takes place. We will activate the slip, which will take a little bit of paperwork as well, and then we'll connect you with Gary right now, Interport. So you'll have to bring the boat into Bahia Mar once that's all done. They'll have to do all the same paperwork of checking in your crew. That's pretty much it once it's activated. So Gary will take care of all the paperwork after that. We are not involved in the customs paperwork.
And just jumping quickly to Gary, because I saw something on, which is also in your packets today, the LMC fact sheet on the foreign trade zone. Although this is talking about customs, when it comes to the crew that's on the vessel, that they still have to go through immigrations, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. What happens when you put a vessel into the foreign trade zone, you surrender your cruising license. And the vessel becomes merchandise. It's no longer a pleasure craft, it's merchandise. By the way, this has never been done anywhere in the country or the world. So everybody's looking at us to see how we break it. And if we break it, then they'll say we won't do that. But other than that,
we're not going to break it.
We're
right?
not. We're doing a good job so far. But once the vessel puts into in this case Bahia Mar, to be sold. It becomes merchandise. And we do a document to receive it into the zone. The only way that vessel leaves is if it's exported or if it goes into another zone. Or, third option, is if it goes for exhibition up to 120 days. So it can go anywhere up to Nantucket if you want to, but it must be back within 120 days. But it is now merchandise.
But, and again, a point for clarification, so let's, just so we stay within the hypothetical so you could follow along. Jeff brought the boat to Bahia Mar, so she's docked at Bahia Mar, and then let's just say they can leave Bahia Mar still being under the guise of the foreign trade zone protection, but up through 120 days, and then has to return
To the originating zone.
to the original foreign trade zone. So they can't then return to LMC, they have to go to Bahia Mar and then go to LMC, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then, after the boat's there, I want to go back to the slip idea, and I think, Doug, I want you to jump in here too, because I think the same concept goes for what exactly does it mean, like a slip? So is that any slip that you designate, and then at LMC, where in particular? Is it the entire yard, including your subcontractors, or is it a specific area?
In LMC, I think it's the same in Bahia Mar. It is a specific slip that we designated as a foreign trade zone slip.
And so let's say there's 3 or 4 vessels that want to utilize the foreign trade zone. Can you activate more slips?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the same thing?
It's 48 hours, I think, to activate a slip.
What we did is the foreign trade zone board gives us the entire property as an approved foreign trade zone area. Customs allows us to activate only the amount of property you need for your particular activities. So now that the boat show is coming at the beginning of November, we'll activate many more slips. And then when the boat show leaves, we'll shrink it down to what they normally need on a monthly basis.
Okay. So then going back to our hypothetical, the boat is, whether it's at Bahia Mar or whether it's at LMC, she's there. Jeff is going to bring an American client to take a look at the boat. Now the client wants to actually make an offer. The boat does not have to leave your facilities, correct?
No.
Nope.
Okay. And then let's just say they make the offer. Now it's time to do a survey and sea trial. The boat could leave your facilities. And if she started at Bahia Mar after the sea trial, can she go to LMC, or does she have to come back to Bahia Mar?
Always has to come back to the originating foreign trade zone.
Okay.
For anything you're going to do to the yacht, you file what is called a manipulation permit, which is a 216. It's a relatively easy document to file. It takes about 48 hours to get approved. And one of those purposes is exhibition or sea trials or whatever the purpose may be. It must come back to the originating zone within 120 days. It can stop at other zones.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be in a
Has to go
permit.
back.
But it doesn't have to be in an activated area in another zone. So it doesn't have to take an activated space if it goes to LMC for 30 days. There's no need to do a zone transfer. It can leave Bahia Mar on a manipulation permit, go to LMC, get work done in the domestic environment, and come back to Bahia Mar, and it's always been a foreign boat.
And can I clarify one thing?
Please.
So you're going out for sea trial, you want to do a survey. You can go to LMC, Director, Rossioli, any of those other yards, and do that survey while you're still on that manipulation.
Okay. Now, who's filing that manipulation bond?
The originating foreign trade zone.
Okay, so Bahia Mar would file that on behalf of the owner of the vessel, correct?
Bahia Mar wouldn't, Gary in this case would be, because Gary is working directly with the vessel.
Okay.
And that may be any customs agent in this
Right.
case.
In some cases, we're acting as the support entity behind the operator of the marina. In some cases, the marinas are learning how to do it on their own. And in the case of some of the merchandise foreign trade zones like National Marine, they'll have full-scale systems behind them to do that on their own as well.
Okay, so let's loop close the transaction. So she's at Bahia Mar, she goes off, let's say she goes to LMC, she gets hauled out, they do the survey, done, goes offshore, does the sea trial, comes back to Bahia Mar, and now they want to close. Tell us about that. Are there restrictions, or they have no issues with closing? No duty needs to be paid by the seller?
You're in a foreign environment.
Okay.
Foreign trade zones outside the commerce of the United States. So you can have a transaction, you change title, they'll redo the paperwork under the new title, and now the new owner has a yacht in a foreign trade zone.
So now it's owned by a completely, let's just assume, since she's 150 feet, she's going to be owned by another entity. That entity then needs to file the paperwork. How, during the closing, she's at Bahia Mar, how does that work from transferring the paperwork of one owner to another? Is that something?
That's something Gary does.
That's something you do, Gary, then for
It's an electronic.
the owners?
It's electronic filings.
Okay.
You basically electronically remove the yacht from one owner to another, transfer zone to zone within the same zone. So the yacht doesn't even have to move. You just transfer ownership.
Okay.
We file electronically with customs.
So now she is owned by another company. Let's just say she's owned now by ABC Company, and they want to take the vessel and bring it to LMC to get work done, let's just say totally refit the vessel. If that's the case, then what's the procedure that needs to be done?
They'll then again have to get with Gary and do a zone-to-zone transfer if they're staying within the foreign trade zone. If the new owner decides, let's say, to go, they want to flag it American flagged or get it reflagged, then they'll have to export the vessel from the foreign trade zone, which means going back through Gary, a whole list of paperwork. Export the cargo.
Right, zone-to-zone transfer is another electronic document.
Okay.
So to transfer from one zone to another, it's a relatively 24-hour, 48-hour process. If they want to title the boat or flag the boat in the United States, we simply pay the duties on the boat.
Then the
do a
duty gets
consumption
paid.
entry, right?
Okay.
Which we do or any other broker can do. If they want the boat to be flagged a foreign flag, they have to do a clearance to foreign port. But they actually have to arrive to the foreign port and give us the arrival certification before their responsibility ends.
So just to clarify then, she's at Bahia Mar, she's closed, she's now owned by ABC Company, and we want to, or the owner then wants to take her to LMC. At that point, since she's going from one foreign trade zone to another, she doesn't have to go over to the Bahamas and
Nope.
clear out.
No.
But if she wasn't going to LMC, then would that be the point in which, if she was leaving Bahia Mar, she would have to go out to, let's just say Bimini, since that's the closest,
It
and then
depends on
come
the
back
purpose.
into the
It
US?
depends on the purpose for leaving.
Okay,
Is it a temporary leave or is it a permanent leave? If it's a permanent leave, it must be exported. But export isn't 12 miles out. Export is actually touching a
Foreign
foreign
soil.
port.
okay,
And it's 30 minutes away maybe, but it's, it has to touch foreign soil.
Okay.
And it has to be accepted by foreign authorities as incoming. And then it can come back with a cruising license.
So in this case, let's go back, she's not going to clear out, she's going to then transfer over to LMC. So explain to us at LMC then what could be done and what you're experiencing thus far.
Well, if they are going to do general maintenance and repairs and not introduce any foreign-made materials, they can go to any shipyard and leave on that manipulation.
Okay.
And get the work done as long as they report back there within 120 days.
So if they weren't going to utilize foreign parts, then she stays under the foreign trade zone at Bahia Mar. She goes, let's just say she goes to directors, gets work done. But then after she's done, and as long as it's within the 120 days, she goes back to Bahia Mar, and then she could either stay there under the foreign trade zone, or she could be then exported, correct? Okay. But if she were to come to your yard, now everything that we just talked about that happened at Bahia, we could do at LMC.
Right, absolutely.
Show the boat, survey, sea trial, close on her, and then the benefits, talk to us about the benefits of the foreign trade zone when it comes to the repair and foreign parts.
If you're going to introduce foreign goods, materials, if you're in a foreign trade zone, you're not going to pay tax or duty on those goods that are introduced into the boat, as long as that boat departs to to a foreign port upon departure.
So Bad Kitty comes to LMC. She wants to do, let's just say $500,000 worth of work, because we're going to refit it. They're going to do the interior, they're going to paint the exterior, the paint's going to be imported, so then there's no duty on that paint.
Right.
And then the services to actually have the vessel painted, normally you would have to pay Florida sales tax on that. Is the understanding that you don't?
I'm going to defer that to
If the
Gary.
yacht is then exported, you don't, because it was an export.
Okay, so okay, that's great. So you painted the yacht, so then LMC does not charge, or you're slashed and ready to leave the yard. She's got to go to a foreign port?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. And if you look at, in the case of paint and engines, which I happen to know the duty rate, paint is 6.1% duty. Engines are 2.5% duty. If
Okay.
you're going to then put an American flag on that yacht after you've done the work, you're only going to pay 1.5% duty on the add-ons, because
Okay.
it's now a yacht. It's no longer paint, it's no longer an engine. And you're going to pay taxes, but you're capped at taxes. You have a tax cap.
And that's already existing, that
Right, that already
we
exists.
could take
So
part
you can
of.
accumulate all this pent-up taxes, if you want, or tax liability, if you will, but you're always going to be capped. So
Right.
coming out of a foreign trade zone is as if you were first coming into the country, even if you're going to pay duties on the yacht here.
Okay.
So there's benefits. There's also step-down benefits from a higher duty rate to that of a yacht, which is 1.5%.
Okay, so then to recap, we have a vessel that was foreign built, brought into the US. So US brokers now would be able to bring a foreign built vessel that has no duty paid into one of these activated and certified foreign trade zones, which right now are these two locations, Bahia and LMC. And you'd be able to show that vessel to an American citizen or resident. You'd be able to sea trial her, you would be able to close on her, and you would be able to do any sort of refit work or any other work that needed to be done on her. And
provision the boat.
provision the boat, okay.
With fuel and consumables.
And so-
Foreign fuel and foreign consumables.
We know that National Marine is in the process of being certified. So when that company is certified, then any goods that they have that are foreign made can then be brought to the vessel if she's at one of these foreign trade zones,
Right.
correct? And put on the vessel and not be charged.
Right, and not only hoses and things like that, but actually liquor and cigars and fuel and
Correct.
caviar and all
Jet
the things that they,
skis,
right.
slides, whatever
Right.
floats their boat.
Jet skis are foreign. Yeah.
Okay. One quick add-on, would you talk about the drawback that we discussed when we were on our conference call chit-chatting? Because I
So
think this
you're-
is another amazing tool for the brokers in the room.
I think it's low-hanging fruit, really. There are several yachts here in the community or around the United States that have previously paid duty. And if they put them into a foreign trade zone, you can actually get that duty back. So long as the yacht then later on is exported, but it can be exported to the Bahamas and come back as a cruising, on a cruising permit. But when you put a yacht into a foreign trade zone, you're deemed to have exported. And it's really the only way you can get your duty back, because otherwise the yacht leaves under its own power, and there's no documentary evidence that it was exported. So you get
Your duty drawback.
duty drawback, and in the case of a $10 million yacht, it's $150,000. There are costs involved. Customs keeps 1%, and then we charge a fee for doing that. So I assume that you're going to get a charge of about 20% of that duty. You're still going to get $120,000 back, which is money that you would otherwise not get back. And there are a few $10 million yachts hanging around this area.
So then let's just, hypothetically, we have now, Motor Yacht Good Kitty, right? And she's foreign built, came here, she paid the 1.5% duty. Let's say she paid it 6 months ago. She goes into LMC and she wants to now draw back that 1.5%.
Correct.
Is there a cap on how long ago that duty was paid, or
5 years.
5 years? A whole 5
5
years?
years.
Now, does it matter if it was 3 owners previous that paid the duty?
As long as you're given the right to draw back by the originating duty payer.
Okay.
So if the original duty payer gives you a letter assigning you the rights to draw back, you can draw back.
So then, maritime attorneys, that might be something we want to add on our closing list.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so that is the information that we thought was most critical to get out. I don't know if we have time for Q&A. If not, all 4 of us will be here during the break, and you could do it then. It's up to Cindy and Bob if we're going to do Q&A.
Hi there. I have a lot of questions.
That
I'll
might
keep them-
spill over to the break then.
I'm just going to make one, okay? So if I'm understanding, it takes 48 hours before my broker can take a boat out, as a new boat dealer, I'm sorry. And then the other question that I had really quick is, if I close in the free trade zone, can I put it on a ship without the new buyer taking care, custody, and control, and is that still considered exporting the boat?
For the answer for the second question, yes. You can shipping it on a ship. It's actually the preferred method because it's not going under its own power, and that constitutes an export. You're done.
And then Gary, going back to, and I think either of you could answer that, you said 48 hours after. I think the 48 hours was the advance notice that you need to take the vessel into the foreign trade zone, correct?
In the 48 hours is a number that we threw out there because we haven't had any experience yet. We don't know how long it's going to take for customs to approve paperwork. It may be same day. But right now we're just being a little cautious.
And before we take one more question, I think it's very, very important for everybody in this room to know this is brand new. It's never been done before in the marine industry. So we are learning by doing, correct? So we might not have all the answers, and you might be the test case if you bring something to any of these companies.
Could you talk about the crew staying on board for only 24 hours at a time? Can you elaborate on that?
That's a great question. So the interpretation of Customs and Border Protection and Immigration is that no one can make the yacht their residence while it's in a foreign trade zone. So they have put a 24-hour at a time limit. Now, after 24 hours maximum, that individual needs to leave the vessel for a reasonable amount of time. That is the technical answer. Yes.
So you could rotate crew, Bob said you could rotate crew through, and have we tested what reasonable means yet?
No.
You're an attorney, you tell me.
Well, one of the examples that Customs gave us is if you have a trailer in the parking lot at Bahia Mar, and the crew can point to the trailer as to that's where their residence is while they're at Bahia Mar, that's sufficient. So it's all brand new. We're looking for a further interpretation from the foreign trade zone because technically you can't live aboard merchandise.
Is there any rules or regulations printed up at this point that we can obtain for the brokerage company?
There's sort of pronouncements from Customs. We can share those with you. But even Customs is making the rules up as we go, and everybody's watching us. But right now, Customs is giving us guidelines.
So you
going
get that from
back,
Trey Reader?
I'm sorry, where's the question coming
So you,
from? Oh, there you are.
Actually, you have one.
Yeah, so we put together a little fact sheet that
okay,
It's
that
in your book.
interprets.
an overview of the situation, to kind of
Yeah.
explain it to your customer.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we have, and I think you guys have as well, we have the customer procedures, once you're ready to begin the process, what steps you need to take.
And are the
begin.
rates apt to be higher for these free trade zones for the boats there than the normal dockage rates?
I can't speak to Bahia Mar. Our dockage rates will stay our dockage rates. There will be an administration fee for going into the foreign trade zone because we have paperwork that we have to file. We have monitoring costs that we're going to have. And then if the vessel leaves that foreign trade zone for that 120-day period or a portion thereof, we have to keep a space available for that boat when it comes back.
The same is going to be true for BMR as well. The dockage rates are going to stay the same. And a big thing that Customs really pushed was just staying within the guidelines. We're not trying to take advantage of them or take advantage of certain situations, so it's staying within their guidelines.
So are all four of you equally in tune with all this for the game?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Correct.
As a matter of fact,
And
we
it's really important for you to understand that when you bring, if you bring one of your clients' vessels to either BMR or LMC, that you work very closely between your vessel owner and or captain of the vessel and whoever at these companies are designated your representative. It has to be very transparent and open communication at all times.
Okay, so we have time for one more question, and Danielle offered to reconvene or convene during the break, which is coming up in just one more question. So Jonathan will be at this end, and Danielle's group will be at this end, and you can hammer them out there for information at that time. So I know somebody has the microphone, so let's go there,
my
and then
question's
you can take their
for-
questions to them outside if you would, because we're really running way behind. Go ahead.
Sure. My question is for Gary. Gary, you mentioned that if a boat closes and goes foreign flag, they must be exported and hit a foreign port. Is there a minimum amount of time that they need to stay out of U.S. territory, or can they just hit foreign port and come back? 'Cause I know usually to renew a
Until you
cruise-
hit the foreign port, you have a financial responsibility within the customs district. So, if it takes 30 days to get to that foreign port, customs understands that 30 plus or minus 30 days. But, the idea is to.
I think she's talking about the return. So she
Oh, no,
leaves.
you can
Can you
return
come-
right away.
Okay, because I know usually...
I thought there's no time limit for you to get to the foreign port, as long as you sort of go directly to that foreign port. But you can turn right around and come back.
Come right back.
So you could do a
Okay.
turn and burn.
Okay, I guess that question was coming because I know from renewing cruising licenses, you're usually required to be out 15 days out of the country, so I didn't know if there was any tie there.
Actually, you don't have to be out of the country for 15 days. You're just not going to get issued the cruising license for 15 days. You could come back in and clear into customs. You're just not going to get your cruising license for 15 days.
This is great information. This is great for the industry. It's good for business, and I want to thank all of you. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you.